three-story apartment building that will provide 18 apartments and 18 underground parking spaces that are accessed off MacArthur Lane and Boundary Lane. The purpose of this application is to amend the zoning bylaw from the Central Commercial CC Zone to a site-specific Central Commercial CC Zone to permit construction of an apartment dwelling. An attendance sign-in sheet is located at the back, and if you wish to receive a copy of the forthcoming city staff recommendation report and a copy of the city council decision, please add your contact information to the sign-in sheet. At the same table, copies of this evening's city technical report are available for review, which include all comments received to date. And call on Dan Romanko, Better Neighborhoods, Inc., agent for the applicant, to present the proposed application.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I thought the first application was with regard. Sorry, I thought the first application with regard to St. David Street, and what I heard you read out was Ormond Street. Which one are we doing first? Ormond. Okay, very good. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dan Romanko. I'm a planner with Better Neighborhoods, and the application before you is a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a three-story apartment on the subject lands. Subject lands are located downtown Thorold, on facing Ormond Street. They back onto Boundary Lane and MacArthur Lane, and you can see the context around you. There's a seniors residence opposite, directly opposite on Ormond Street. And there's a mix of apartments and semis and other commercial buildings in the area. This is a shot of the site taken from Boundary Lane, and you can see the seniors residence in the background there. And the site is currently vacant, and it's ready for. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Sorry. So the site is currently vacant, and as you can see, it's ready for redevelopment. So the proposal is three-story apartment with 18 rental units. There's underground parking for the residents. The architecture, which you'll see shortly, is attractive and very compatible with the neighborhood. The proposal adds additional residential units to the downtown area, which affords an option for affordable housing, caters to people looking to downsize, and adds growth to local businesses. In addition, it increases the municipal tax assessment. This is a shot showing the proposed site plan. As you can see, the building takes up most of the site, which is appropriate for a very urban downtown lot. You can see the building is oriented towards Ormond Street with a front entrance there. There's a sidewalk along the south side that addresses the grade change of the building with another entrance along there, and the driveway access to the underground parking is provided off of Boundary Lane, which is shown on the left of the screen. These are examples of the proposed elevation. In the top left corner is the front elevation. The front entrance is just to the bottom left of that. That elevation, the rear elevation shown just below that, and the side elevation, which is the north elevation, is shown on the right, and you can see the grade changes that we're dealing with there. It's probably about 1.5 meters to 2 meters across the site in two directions. From a planning point of view, the site is designated downtown transitional in the official plan, and this proposed use is permitted in the official plan. The purpose of this application is to rezone it to a site-specific CC zone that does not currently permit apartments and address the variances required to permit the proposed. So in summary, the development is ideally located downtown. The building is designed to be compatible with the neighborhood. There's no parking or servicing issues. It's desirable and appropriate, adds residential units to the downtown to support the local economy, and the intensification of the site supports the land use policy objectives. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask you for this development, where will servicing be brought in from? The servicing will be coming off of Ormond Street or from the boundary lane?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the servicing for this site has been anticipated long ago when we did the development for Albert and MacArthur on behalf of this property owner, and it is proposed as a result of the reconstruction of MacArthur Lane, it's to come in off of Boundary and MacArthur. So the service is already there.
Okay. Can I ask you, in regards to parking, what did you state for 18 units? You stated? What are you going to do for parking? Is there parking on site or
parking is
downtown?
Provided underground.
Underground parking?
Yes.
Is this a student residence?
No, it's not. It's rental.
Just ask, you know, because as soon as they see the construction crews, their residents are going to be asking. Okay, I'm fine with that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Yes, is the purpose of this building to cooperate with Cobblestone Gardens? Is this for seniors or is it not, just general rental?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, initially the proposed development was to take in some consideration of synergies with the seniors residents, and it was originally going to be a 6-story building catering to seniors population. The developer has since changed and is looking to do a more higher end rental unit in the downtown, so with no direct affiliation. Although
through you to the presenter. It says there's 18 units in the building, 18 parking spots. How many bedrooms in each unit? Does it vary?
There's a mix of bedrooms. So there's 12 2-bedroom units proposed and 6 1-bedroom units.
30 bedrooms.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In proportion to size of the one on Albert and McCarthy Lane, is it pretty well similar size-wise? Is this a larger? Just trying to get the scope of the size of the two buildings. Are they comparable, or?
It's comparable in height for sure. Albert Street is 4 stories, so this is proposed at 3, and it's proposed with a pitched roof, whereas Albert is 4. So, you know, to the peak, it's roughly the same. The site is a little longer, but from the street, it would actually probably appear a little about on par with Albert Street in terms of its size.
In respect, you said it was underground parking. Is it on ground or underground parking?
Underground parking.
So it's different than the other unit is on ground, correct? Or semi-underground?
With respect to Albert?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. It's very similar to Albert because we're taking advantage of the grade change. So it's essentially kind of half out of the ground at the back to minimize the ramp length and provide the maximum amount of parking that's available. And that is really no different than the grade change that was also experienced on 10 Albert Street. Okay, so in this, yeah, they're very similar with regard to the underground parking provision.
And parking spots, is there 1 per unit? Is that the plan?
That is our objective, yes.
Thank you.
Any consideration given to having a driveway out to Ormond Street to alleviate a lot of the traffic congestion you're going to have right now with the 2 other apartment buildings back there that are using MacArthur Lane?
There was really no consideration to provide vehicular access. The laneway in a traditional development pattern, which you have downtown, is most appropriate in terms of providing vehicular access, whereby you don't compromise the frontage through vehicles, so you don't have those interactions or conflicts with pedestrians. You have a much more attractive streetscape, and those objectives are part of the good urban design principles in which we typically design our proposals.
It's a very narrow one-lane road that 3 apartments empty out to. This will be the 3rd apartment that'll be emptying out to MacArthur Lane, going in one way. And I'm asking that question of why. That's why I asked the question. Why aren't you considering an access out to Ormond Street?
In addition to the access from the rear?
Well, no, it's just the congestion in the back of that. That's a laneway. That was never a road. It was a laneway back in the time. And now you're going to have so much traffic on that laneway. It's called MacArthur Lane specifically because of that. And now you're looking at having 18 more cars coming in and out, visitors, I don't know where they're going to park. With 2 bedrooms, there's 2 people. Probably 2 people have 2 cars. So, you know, I'm just looking at it and all the congestion that's possible there.
Well, the site will only support a certain number of parking spaces, so I would think if people had more than 1 car, they would choose not to live there, if that was important to them. So there can't possibly any more vehicles than the 18 spaces that we're anticipating. And our feeling is that the laneway is the best tool that urban designers have to deal with cars so that we can create good streets. And while I appreciate the concerns about traffic, we don't anticipate any traffic issues associated with the new developments that are taking place there.
Okay, thank you. I'll proceed here. I'll have our technical report presented by Julie Hanna, our senior planner. You're going to have to speak right into that microphone, Julie. We're going to get that fixed.
Tonight I present the technical report regarding 7 and 9 Ormond Street North. Staff will outline the policies, public and agency input, and present recommendations in a subsequent report that will be presented to council.
Thank you very much. Now is the time for public input. If a person or public body chooses not to provide oral or written comments at the public meeting and the City of Thorold before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, this will result in loss of any rights to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Thorold to the Ontario Municipal Board. Now at this time, is there anyone present who wishes to speak for or against the application? Please come forward to the podium, state your name and address and telephone number for our needs. I don't see anybody coming forward, so I'll proceed with this. With my closing remarks. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13, pursuant to Section 34. The city's general committee will consider staff's recommendation report, which will be subsequently considered by city council at a future date. Anyone wishing to receive a copy of city council's decision as a result of this application is asked to submit their request in writing to the city clerk. As such, this public meeting portion of this application is now closed. And I'll proceed to our second public meeting. Proposed amendment to the City of Thorold's official plan 2016 and the City of Thorold's comprehensive zoning bylaw 2140-97. And the proponent is Anna Arlada. To designate a portion of the lands from open space and parks to urban living area and to permit a density of 108 units per hectare. To rezone the lands from residential second density R2S zone and open space OS zone to a site-specific residential fourth density R4B zone to permit construction of an apartment dwelling. OPA 03-2017 and ZBA 11-2017. This public meeting is being held pursuant to the provision of Section 22 and 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended. The above noted application has been submitted to facilitate the development of a 4-story condominium apartment building that will provide 23 apartments, 16 two-bedroom and 7 one-bedroom and 23 at-grade parking spaces. The purpose of the proposed official plan amendment is to designate a portion of the lands from open space park to urban living area and to permit a density of 108 units per hectare. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the land from residential second density R2S zone and open space OS 0S zone to a site-specific residential fourth density R4B zone to permit the construction of an apartment dwelling. An attendance sign-in sheet is located at the back. If you wish to receive a copy of the forthcoming city staff recommendation report and a copy of the city council decision, please add your contact information to the sign-in sheet. At the same table, copies of this evening's city technical report are available for review, which include all comments received to date. Dan Romanko, Better Neighborhoods Home Inc., agent for the applicant, is here to present the proposed application. And again, welcome. Welcome, Dan, and can you please speak right into the mic?
Good evening. As discussed, this is the application for the OPA and zoning amendment to permit a 4-story apartment at 23A St. David Street East. What's hatched in blue on your screen here is the highlighted area of the subject lands. The lands are located on St. David Street East, just east of Carlton Street North and the Thorold Secondary School. They abut the unopened Welland Street North road allowance to the east and are just north of McMillan Park. The photos you see we're taking on the unopened road allowance. The one on the left is looking south towards the park, and the one on the right is looking north towards St. David Street. Looking across the site, we have on the south end is a bush line, which you can see in the left photo. There's also a fence along that whole edge, not directly on the property line, but blocking access from the park to from the north. And just a little further north of that is the shot of the site on the right photograph. When there's about a 2.5 meter grade change across the site. The property is comprised of two parcels that were, if council recalls, the triangular piece, which is hatched in orange at the bottom corner there, was parkland that was dedicated surplus back last year and purchased and consolidated with the part in red, which is the original lot. It doesn't currently have address because there was no building ever put on it. The development also takes into consideration the unopened road allowance, which is the white hatching just to the east of that. The proposed development includes a 4-story condominium apartment with 24 units. There are 23 at-grade parking spaces available, 2 of which are accessible. And the access to this is located off the extension of the newly constructed public road, which is Welland Street North, just south of St. David Street. There is on-street visitor parking provided, and I'll show you the site plan in a moment. The architecture is quite attractive. It's compatible with the neighborhood. New residential units will be added to the downtown neighborhood, providing an alternative housing option, increasing the growth to the local economy, and the municipal tax assessment. This is the site plan as proposed. So you can see the road allowance will be constructed to public standards and be a public road. Services are proposed to come in off of that from St. David Street East and into the site. Parking is provided and the building is sited in such a manner as to provide the maximum compatibility with the adjacent neighbors and take advantage of the park-like setting. It was also cited to address the grade changes on the site and improve that situation with regard to stormwater. There is a finger, which you can see in green, that is the current property frontage. It's all of 16 feet, so not very practical in terms of access. So really opening the road allowance is the best way to redevelop this property. The other really interesting thing about the opportunity to open this road is it provides opportunities for the adjacent neighbor. If you see the apartment to the right, just to the east there, they now have an opportunity to take access off of the public road to the parking in the rear, as they should, instead of using the driveway access alongside of that. This could enhance the streetscape along St. David's by replacing that asphalt with landscaping, providing nice patios for the units located on the side of that apartment, which currently walk out into the asphalt. And that would increase the value of that property immensely. As you can see as well, we are now providing access to the park from the north, which currently does not exist. And you can see a sidewalk will be provided for that purpose, so that the residents north of St. David Street and that neighborhood can now access the park. This is an example of the proposed elevation. It's quite an attractive building, flat roof to limit the height and be compatible with the neighborhood. The siting of the building is been done in such a manner as to bench it into the slope where possible. And you can see it will be well landscaped to provide an appropriate buffer with neighbors. So the neighborhood will benefit from this. In addition to providing pedestrian access to McMillan Park, there's on-street visitor parking. And there's also those opportunities I was speaking of earlier with regard to landscaping the adjacent property and improving the streetscape. At the moment, the site is designated parks and open space in the official plan. There's an amendment required to permit this development. Part of this is due to the fact that we believe there to be a mapping error on the schedule of the official plan, and earlier conversations with staff corroborated that understanding. Notwithstanding, the triangular part of the park that was recently acquired would have been designated as open space anyway, so an official plan was inevitable. Rezoning will look at a change from R2S to R4 to permit the apartment building and address any of the variances that are required. So we took it upon ourselves to engage the neighborhood before this meeting, and on October 31st we hand-delivered some invitations to neighbors, inviting them to meet with us to discuss the proposed development. We received two responses from the neighbors. One were email comments, and the others were the owners from 25 St. David Street East, which I understand are here this evening. This image shows the distribution of those mailers. I think there was 10 or 15 in total, just to anyways, they were targeted to the neighbors that were most directly impacted by the development. In conclusion, we have a proposal that's ideally located in a downtown neighborhood, and it's close to walking distances. We're providing access to the park from the north, along with visitor parking. The building is designed to be compatible with the neighborhood. There are no parking or servicing issues associated with this. The development is desirable and appropriate, and the new residential units will support local growth, and the intensification will also support the land use policy objectives. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions to our presenter? Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the presenter. I know in the past we've had some flooding problems in that area. And I don't know whether they've been addressed yet or not, but I know with this particular building going in, I would imagine that it could impact the neighborhood in that area from a flooding perspective. Have you addressed that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have looked at the engineering extensively on this, and like most developments, new development has to adhere to engineering standards through the site plan process. This is no different, and the net result is that the neighbors win because all of their current flooding issues get resolved. And we've looked at this and figured out a way to address this and make sure that the grading works so that we can deal with the stormwater.
Councillor Whalen.
Mayor, you mentioned that you sent out some invitations, some comments for the neighbors in that area. Were there much response to that?
We had the two responses, one via email, and one I met with the homeowners of 25, which are just adjacent to the finger on that.
Can you supply them to their city staff so we can get them in our package so we know what the comments were?
You're looking for the comments or the letter?
The comments, yeah, the feedback. Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to the question that Councillor Neal asked, you said that the flooding issues will be resolved, but I'm not quite clear, maybe I missed it. How will the flooding issues that potentially are there now be resolved by the building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current topography of the site is such that you basically have a hill running into backyards. Okay, you've got 2.5 meters, which is about 8 feet of fall from the park, uncontrolled. There are some retaining walls in the rear yards of, I think, 27 St. David Street, but there's nothing really to stop the stormwater, and it ponds in the middle, right near the road allowance currently, and there's a nice big willow tree there, which of course loves to get its feet wet. So Because the site hasn't been developed and is more or less in a natural state, there are no controls for stormwater management in place. Through the site plan process, what we'll do, and what we've already really essentially addressed, is how the stormwater will flow through the natural grading system, through catch basins and storm sewers to collect that. The parking lot itself will act as some retention for that. There's curbing on the parking lot. So you can appreciate that the site is now being managed through a stormwater process, okay? All this, of course, will be vetted through engineering at the city and meeting their standards.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Longo.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the, thanks for the presentation. I do have a question here. It's a 23-unit apartment building and there's 21 parking spaces?
Just to correct that, it's 24 units and 23 parking spaces.
Okay, two of the parking spaces are accessible parking spaces,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. So theoretically, 24, well, this page says 23 units. 24-unit apartment building with...
I'm sorry, 23 units.
23 units. Okay. 23-unit apartment building with 21 regular parking spaces.
Can we get clarification on that, please?
Sorry, the question is how many units?
There are 23 apartment units in the building,
Correct.
correct? And there are 21 regular parking spaces?
Correct, and 2 accessible.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Ugolini.
Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, the parking places on the road that are for visitor parking, you say there's 9 spots?
At the moment, the site plan that we had did show 9 spots.
So, and is that parking limited to one side of the street?
Well, you can see in the site plan that we're showing there, it's one side on the way in, save and except for the end. If necessary, there are other on-street visitor parking spaces available on the opposite side.
But our question always is to make sure that we have access for emergency vehicles and two-way traffic, so to make sure that if we end up with parking on both sides, we run into problems with emergency vehicles and other issues. And that's why we like to limit parking to one side.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you look carefully at the site plan that we've provided, we've already anticipated that, and the gray hatched area shows the turning movements of a fire truck. So this is, I mean, this is a little ahead of the site plan aspect, but we are providing turnaround facilities for fire services.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Pion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify that, you called it a green, you called it a finger that goes out into St. David Street. You're accessing to the right of that between the proposed building and the current building. What's to become of that green finger, the narrow, what could have been a laneway, but you said is too narrow to use as such?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the discussions I had with the owners of 23 or 25 St. David Street East, which are the residents of the home directly east of that finger, they're currently using and have for some time been using that finger, if you will, as a driveway because there's no other parking provided on their property. And they have an arrangement with the current landowner to do so. When I met with those folks, one of their, well, principally their concern was that they don't lose that. And it's my understanding that the developer is prepared to sell that because it's really not adding anything of benefit to this particular development. And so the intent is to rezone the property, anticipating that that will be severed off and purchased by that homeowner.
Thank you.
Councillor Longo?
Just one last question on the parking. The road allowance coming in, that is a city road?
That's correct. It'll be a public road. It's current.
Visitor parking spots, those are public parking spots, correct? They're not part of the development.
No, they're not. Well, they are and they're not. They're publicly owned. They're publicly owned, but we're proposing that as part of the development. With the developer will construct it to address visitor parking.
You can't limit the parking to only visitors or residents of the building.
No, you can't.
Any other questions? Just one quick question. Councillor P, I want to ask you a question about that access. That'll not be an access to St. David's Road. The that green area on the site plan.
No, it's not
That'll
intended
be
to serve
blocked
as an
off.
access.
Okay.
It doesn't currently enjoy the need for services, so there's really, the only value is really to the homeowner there.
Okay, that Welland Avenue easement, no, you're building the road and the parking spots, and that'll be, that is at the developer's cost or at the city's cost?
So, Welland Street North, that goes from, I think, from St. David Street east to, I think it's Regent Street on the south of the park. That's currently, that whole stretch, that white that I showed you earlier, that entire thing is an unopened road allowance. So it's city-owned property and happens to be adjacent to the park as well. What we're proposing is to open a stretch of that unopened road allowance, as you see above, for the purpose of providing municipal frontage onto this property, whereby negating the need for it with that finger to St. David Street, and constructing it to municipal standards at the developer's cost.
The developer is paying for it then?
Correct.
And then the city takes it over?
Correct.
Okay. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last question. Is there any discussion with staff about a turnabout at the end of that extension of that road allowance? You got a dead end, it looks like it's proposed there now. It looks like a little dangerous. You got people backing up and driving forward into a dead end. And then again, with snow removal and so on, you're going to dump it into the area at the end of the road. Is there any further discussion that way with staff about doing a turnabout or roundabout at the end of the street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't had any further discussion. Those are really site plan issues. As I said earlier, we are providing a turnaround facility. The technical requirements of vehicular turning movements that you're referring to, I think, have not been addressed through staff. So we will have that discussion.
Sounds good.
At the site plan stage.
Are there any other questions? Okay. So, thank you very much for your presentation. And I'll call on our planner, Ms. Julie Hanna, senior planner, to highlight the technical report and department and agency comments. We can't hear you. You really got to speak right into the mic.
So, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I present the technical report regarding the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 23A St. David Street East. Staff will outline policies, public and agency input, and present recommendations in a subsequent report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council for Ms. Hanna? Seeing none, I'll move on. Pardon me?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to ask to present, but in the diagram, it looks like it's 3 separate buildings. It looks like the white area is a walkway separating 1 building, 2 buildings, walkway, 3 separate buildings in the back, all adjoined.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the site plan is a schematic, and
Okay.
the building is showing the hallway as well as the approximate size of the apartment buildings. But as Mr. Romenko indicated, it was just a schematic to be provided for the zoning bylaw and official plan amendment purposes, and more detailed drawings will be forthcoming at site plan stage.
Okay, thank you. Just deceiving, it looked like three separate
Thank you,
buildings.
Counselor. Okay, it's time for public participation. Sorry. If a person or public body chooses not to provide oral or written comments at the public meeting in the City of Thorold before the proposed official plan and/or zoning bylaw amendment are adopted, this will result in loss of any rights to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Thorold to the Ontario Municipal Board. Now, at this time, is there anyone present who wishes to speak for or against the application? Please come forward to the podium. Please state your name, your address, and your telephone number, please, for the records.
Good evening. My name is Tim Lundy. I live at 70 Carlton Street North, and my phone number is 905-680-2071.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to start off with, we did receive one of the letters from Mr.
Please speak into the microphone, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. We did receive a letter from Mr. Romenko. Excuse me. We took it upon ourselves to go around to all the affected neighbors to the west, north, and east of the proposed building, and got a petition opposing it. I do have a bit of some notes put together against the proposed building, and I will read those now. The proposed zoning bylaw and official plan amendments to allow a four-story building are a large concern for my wife and I and the neighborhood. We live on the west side of the proposed building that is shown to be 6.6 meters from our rear property line. Having a building erected that would be 40 feet plus tall in such close proximity will have a very negative impact for us. The morning sun that we and our neighbors currently enjoy would be non-existent to limited at best. The time and money and energy that we have spent over the years in our backyards for relaxation will be lost. The likelihood that the plants would survive without the sun due to the shadow cast by the building would be minimal. Sorry. We already live with a three-story building that casts a shadow in the afternoon and leaves us only our backyard for privacy. We'd like to know if a shadow casting study has been completed for the proposed four-story building. If one has not been considered, we formally request one be conducted and we be provided with a report. The only elevation that was provided is of the north and east sides of the building. I'm assuming based on the site plan that the west side of the building will be identical. If that is the case, then it appears that the east and west elevations have been designed to the maximum glazed area permitted by the Ontario Building Code. This would result in zero privacy for the residents on Carlton Street North from the 3rd and 4th floor apartments. As noted in the technical report, the grade of the site would be raised by 2.5 meters. In actuality, the proposed building could be considered a 5-story increase from its current state. The 2.5 meter grade height adjustment raises more concerns for us. The majority of the proposed site will be a hard surface, which will only magnify the current drainage issues of the site in its current state. Would constructing a stormwater storage area under the parking lot require deep earthworks? Would the soils on the site support this structure or the 4-story building? Has the owner or agent requested a geotechnical report for the site? After speaking to our neighbors who have lived lived here for 30 years or more, this area has had soil brought in numerous times to fill it in, as it has always been swampy. If the soils on the site aren't capable of supporting the 4-story building and the stormwater storage, would this result in piles being driven into the ground to support these structures? This would have a large potential to cause structural damage to our homes, and who would pay for the potential repairs? The majority of the, oh, I already said that, sorry. I'll continue on. I'm also concerned about connecting the new water and sanitary surfaces for the proposed building to the existing service. Do the existing services have the capacity to add 23 units to it? Has this been confirmed by the owner agent or the city? The site plan also raises numerous concerns for the neighborhood, reducing the parking requirement to a 1-to-1 ratio. It's insufficient. Granted, there are 9 parking spots on the Welland Street North extension. This is a gross underestimation for the parking needed for residents of the building and visitors. Excuse me. The green space provided between the homes on Carlton Street North and the west side of the proposed building appears to have insufficient space to accommodate an access path to the building and an adequate landscaping buffer for all 4 stories. Are the owner agent, the existing trees at 27 St. David's East, 68 Carlton Street North, 1770 Carlton Street North will not survive the construction process. When they die, is the owner going to pay for their removal? It should also be noted that the trees depicted on the south side of the building won't exist, as they will be removed to construct the building. New replacement trees are not indicated on the site plan. I would also like to point out that the shrubs indicated on the perspective drawing, although they might be artist things, do not exist in the rear yards on the homes on Carlton Street North. Excuse me. Are the owner agent going to install a new fence along the affected properties to adequately screen the first floor of the building and to negate the light cast from vehicles in the parking lot? This is specifically a concern for the homes on St. David's Street East, as the parking lot requires a retaining wall for the increased grade height. At that level, light could be cast into the 2nd-story bedroom windows. The neighborhood would also like to know why the proposed site is being overdeveloped. The province does encourage high-density intensification of sites. With lots of area for development in Thorold, do we really need to have this intensification in an established neighborhood? After speaking with all of our neighbors directly affected by the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, if development of the site were to happen, we would all be much more accepting of an R3 zoning to allow for 2-story townhouses. This would be more in line with the existing neighborhood and have a lesser impact on our enjoyment and privacy of our backyards. Excuse me. Less parking issues and less potential for drainage and servicing issues. Building a 4-story building in our backyards will decrease our property values as opposed to 2-story townhouses or single detached homes, which have little to no effect on this established community. After reading the excerpt of policy B1.1.5, this 4-story building does not respect the character of the adjacent residential neighborhoods. In terms of height, bulk, and massing, it will cause increased or unacceptable levels of congestion on surrounding roads. And lastly, and most notably, the site does not have adequate land for required parking, amenity areas, and landscaping/buffering on site. The neighborhood would also like to know the intentions of the owner, i.e., is this going to be built as quickly as possible, or is the zoning planning being put in place to sell to a developer? Are these condo apartments going to be rented or sold? And what is your target demographic, if any? This building has a large potential to be filled with university students and become a frat house. I thought the city was trying to keep students out of established neighborhoods. I would also like to point out that the perspective drawing is a poor representation of the size and massing compared to the houses in the background. The houses in the background are 1.5 stories tall, and their roof lines are above the 4-story building. The existing houses are also much closer together. excuse me, than shown. Showing trees that are 50 feet tall or more that don't exist, as well as the shrubs on the existing properties, is laughable. I believe the existing residents deserve to see a proper representation of this building instead of one which diminishes its impact. Lastly, if council does approve the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, the residents of the neighborhood want to be involved in the site plan approval process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is not a hockey game, it's a room of government, and I cannot allow that. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against the proposal? Please come forward, state your name, your address and telephone number for the record.
My name is Jim Park. I live at 21 St. David Street East. My phone number is 905-227-5698. I was shocked when this came to my door back in October. We've been living in that neighborhood for almost 30 years now, and life has been quiet and fairly tranquil except for all the trucks that started going up and down our street about 5 or 6 years ago. That's more or less been resolved. At least there's only a few going by every day now, so I can tolerate that. But I was trying to imagine the impact of 24, 25, how many residential units are going to wind up at the end of our street and what kind of traffic that's going to present morning and afternoon, perhaps in the evening if people are working on shifts. As I said, it's a relatively quiet neighborhood now, and we kind of like to keep it that way. I'm really dubious of the parking statements the prospective developer made with respect to 9 spots on what will become Welland Street. There's not a lot of parking on St. David Street now as it is. It's a fairly narrow street, and if you park on one side of it, which would be the north side, sorry, the west side, no, the north side, there's no room to park cars on the south side, so you can't have parking on both sides of the street. Why would you want to add 9 visitor spots to an area that really can't accommodate what's already there? Without building more visitor parking on site, I can't help but think I'm going to have strangers' cars parked in front of my house when I don't know it or expect it. I would echo many of the previous presenters' sentiments. We didn't respond to this when it first came around. I made a few notes on it myself, but really he's done a much better job because I think it impacts him more directly than it will me. But I would echo, I have a real big concern about the drainage back in that property right now. As he pointed out, it's more or less a swamp right now when it rains. And there's also a massive willow tree back there that sucks up thousands of gallons of water every summer. If that tree disappears, where's all that water going to go? If I'm looking at the site plan as I see on the screen right now, that willow tree would be sort of on the upper right-hand corner of the parking lot. That goes, what do we do about the water and the drainage problem? I question, although I have no reason to doubt or suspect, but I question the quality of the sewage system that's under St. David Street right now. I've lived there for, as I said, 30 years, 1989, I believe we bought in there. And I don't recall any major sewer upgrades in the time that I've lived there. So you're going to add 23 new units plus drainage from that parking lot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to what I consider to be an unupgraded sewage system. I'd like some answers to that, if I could. Generally speaking, the complexion and the texture of our neighborhood is a bunch of pre-war vintage houses, nicely maintained by their owners. And if you put in a property like this that looks pretty modern, I agree, doesn't look too bad at the face of it, but it's going to change the complexion of the neighborhood considerably. The idea of stuffing a 4-story condominium complex into a bit of vacant parkland behind a few nice old houses really speaks to somebody grabbing an awful lot of opportunity out of a pretty tiny space. I would also really question the efforts to rezone that from R2 or open space to R4 without considering an R3 somewhere in the middle. I'll be honest, I don't know what R3 and R4 and R2 exactly mean, but R4 obviously is the maximum amount of density that you could pack in there without going up to 26 stories high, which we certainly don't want to see. But I think it's totally inappropriate to consider rezoning an area that has been parkland for such a long time and such a drastic change from a parkland to a high-density R4 area. That's really a question I don't even want to entertain. So you can tell I'm obviously not in favor of this project. I certainly understand and feel for my neighbors who are going to lose sunlight, be impacted by shade. That probably won't affect me all that much. But if their property values start to go down because of the degradation of their property, I can only expect that mine will do the same. And I certainly don't want that to happen while some developer's making tons of money renting or leasing these properties to other people. And also, I have a question about whether or not this would be used for student residents. We haven't satisfactorily addressed that question yet, so that's one of mine, and I would like to leave that on the record. That's all I have to say for now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again, is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the proposal? Please come forward, state your name and address, and your phone number.
Hello, my name is Marnie Fitzgerald.
You're going to have to speak louder and speak right into the mic.
I'm sorry, I'm soft-spoken, pardon me. My name is Marnie Fitzgerald. I live at 70 Carlton Street North, and my phone number is 905-680-2071. My husband spoke first, Tim Lundy. I just want to reiterate a couple comments that, extend a couple more comments that he had pointed out. We live, all the residents on Carlton Street North are also going to be sandwiched in. We have a high school that's a 3-story high school that has already been extended towards all of our properties. Their windows already look into all of our front windows to start off with, and then if they want to sandwich us all in between a 4-story behind us, we will lose absolutely all of our sunlight. From morning to night, we make it a very small. I just want to extend. I just wanted to talk about the lack of sunlight we'll be having, all of us there. It will totally diminish the price of our property and our quality of living. We will have no, like our backyard is our oasis. We already have high school students running around the front 3/4 of the year. We have a lot of traffic. We have littering, et cetera, many grievances. But this would be, something, it'd be awful for us to have to bear, to have no privacy. And no enjoyment of living. So I plead to you. I just wanted to make that clear. Please excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, is there anybody in the chamber who would like to speak for or against the proposal? Thank you. We'll close off this public meeting.
This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 pursuant to Section 22 and 34. The City's General Committee will consider staff's recommendation report, which will be subsequently considered by City Council at a future date. Anyone wishing to receive a copy of City Council's decision as a result of this application is asked to submit their request in writing to the City Clerk. As such, the public meeting portion of this application is now closed.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I just thought there's a gentleman there with a petition that we want to make sure that it gets handed to staff.
Please hand that to the Ms. Goulet there, please.
May I just make one more comment? Is that possible?
I can't hear you.
May I just make one more comment? Walking around speaking to the neighbors,
The
every single
meeting's
neighbor.
closed, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm very sorry.
You can send, if you have something to add, just send an email to the clerk's department. Okay. We're into our regular council meeting now. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And councilors, are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I'll proceed with our minutes. Minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 25th, 2017. Councilor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Payon, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 21st, 2017 be received and adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Minutes of the special council meeting held on November 21st, 2017. Councilor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Whalen, that the minutes of a special council meeting held on November 21st, 2017 be received and adopted.
Items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We do not have any presentations tonight, nor do we have any delegations. Mayor's report. Sorry. Okay, I'm having trouble with my throat, coughing and that. I'm going to hand this over to, because it's quite lengthy, I'm going to hand it over to our clerk to help me out, pinch it for me, and she'll read it out.
The Mayor's remarks for December 5th are: residents are advised that DocuPet bylaw awareness program will begin by the end of this week. Representatives from DocuPet will be canvassing neighborhoods to provide information to residents with pets. The intention of this program is to educate citizens and ensure all pets in the City of Thorold are appropriately licensed. Information will be left at homes with clear signs a pet resides at the address, or if records indicate a pet with an expired license is known to reside at the address. Please don't be alarmed if you find a card on your door or flyer in your mailbox, and be assured that your privacy is being respected. Pet licensing plays an important role in providing a safe community for residents and their pets. A license allows animal control officers to identify your pet, contact you, and make decisions in the best interest should it become lost or injured. Should you have questions, please contact our Clerk's Department for clarification. Residents are reminded that City Hall will be closed for the holidays from Monday, December 25th through to Monday, January 1st, with regular hours to resume Tuesday, January 2nd. The City of Thorold's Canada 150 Committee invites everyone to the final event of the year. Please join us this Sunday, December 10th at the Thorold Arena from 4 to 6 p.m. for a free community skate and help us celebrate Canada's 150th birthday for the last time. There will be snacks and hot chocolate and door prizes to be won. Ballots were handed out along the parade route, and more will be available at the arena. Bring the whole family down for what is sure to be a great time. On the heels of the disappointing announcement that Thorold Niagara News has closed comes great news that local residents Bob Litico and Kathy Peltier will be relaunching the original Thorold News. This local paper previously won 19 national and provincial awards over 5 years and was 3 times named the best small market community newspaper in Ontario. We look forward to Thorold having its own voice again. Finally, on behalf of Thorold City Council and our entire community, I would like to extend my thanks to everyone who helped organize and participate in this year's Santa Claus Parade. I have heard nothing but compliments that are well deserved by Lauren Krause and her team. Kudos for another fantastic event, and we are already looking forward to next year's parade.
And that concludes my remarks. Better than I could do it.
You're right, your voice is something a bit funny.
Yeah. Communications, lists of committee minutes, correspondence for volunteer committees. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ugolini that the communications on the list of correspondence, 6D minutes/correspondence from volunteer committees be received for information purposes and filed.
Are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Reports, correspondence from the region of Niagara. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Neal, that the communications on list of correspondence 6E, reports and correspondence from the region of Niagara be received for information purposes and filed.
Again, are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Items for information purposes, Councillor Payon.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sharon, that the communications on the list of correspondence 6F be received for information purposes and filed.
Items for discussion. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're into reports. Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Pioni, that the minutes of the General Committee meeting held on November 21st, 2017 be received and adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, are there any items for discussion in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Other business. Oh boy, here we go. Councillor Sharon. Councillor, okay, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Neal. And Whalen, Councillor Whalen. Why did I just say everybody? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I became aware at a LACAC meeting the other day that there is a serious concern by a number of people, many of whom are on LACAC, about the removal of a stop sign on Portland Street that when it crosses Welland Street South. I just want to let all the people who are within that area be aware of the fact that there's the potential of that stop sign being removed. If you have any feelings about that one way or the other, you need to make those known to city staff. Mr. Dunsmore would love to hear from you to make sure that any action that is taking place is one that is supported by the people who live in the area. Being a person who lives there, I have a very strong point of view related to it. Mr. Mayor, you're close enough to it. You may have one as well.
Yes, I do have an opinion on that.
But we need to hear from you then if you do
I
have a point
it.
of view.
What are you doing? I'm opposing it.
Where I think we need to go, we need to hear from the people who live in the area to make sure that Mr. Dunsmore is able to do things that is appropriate on this particular street.
Could you please request a report be brought forward?
Well, I think that Mr. Dunsmore is really waiting for people to respond to his requests for some information, but he's right there at the microphone. Maybe he can explain that better than I can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That report is forthcoming. We're just collecting information at this point in time, and as Councillor Sharon said, we're encouraging people to give as much information as possible so that we can reflect the opinions of the people as best as possible.
Okay, I look forward to that report. Thank you, Councillor Sharon. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple items. One is I've been approached by some residents who live between the area of, on Richmond Street, between the area of Pine Street and Collier Road, whose parking in front of their residence has been restricted due to bike lanes, and ask me whether or not the parking is going to be restricted as you come around the corner from the beer store going up Richmond Street. There is bike lanes there, and I can remember, if I recollect, one of the reasons that we banned parking on Richmond Street between Pine Street and Collier Road was the fact that there was now bike lanes installed, and that these individuals on that street had plenty of parking that they could use within their driveways, and that it was necessary, if we were going to operate proper and safe bike lanes, that parking be restricted.
I see Mr. Dunsmore is at the podium.
So, Mr. Dunsmore, are we going to treat all areas in Thorold where there's bike lanes equally as we do now, that parking be restricted on any areas of Thorold where there is bike lanes that do exist? Because in all other areas in the city, I do believe we ban parking where bike lanes exist, or mostly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The way it's painted currently, is that there is no bike lane on Richmond Street at that area. Right now, it is painted like a paved shoulder, similar to what we did out on Confederation. Our bike feasibility study identifies that area as needing sharrow markings, which is similar to what we do on Sullivan Avenue, and wouldn't restrict the parking.
But to me, Mr. Mayor, it's kind of contradictory that it's the same lines that I see. If I was to drive forward on Richmond Street, it's designated, it definitely looks like a bike lane. There's no designation or delineation there. I don't see no bikes on that bike lane that's going down Richmond Street where it's painted on the road, and the same beforehand. To me, it's perceived to be the same. And is it, or what needs to be done to make it designated as a bike lane so that we can prohibit parking there? Because to me, I look at it as to be unfair. Is that you go through the intersection and you can't park there. But if you come before the intersection, you can park there. And if you were to drive down that road and look at those lanes, they're identical. There's no delineation.
Mr. Dunsmore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the difference is the bike lanes painted, or bike symbols painted in the bike lane, plus the signage that's up on Richmond Street. Further to that, though, we are coming forward with a recommendation to do exactly what we're talking about here, restrict the parking on Richmond Street.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know then. Thank you very much then. It's just that I've been approached by residents and they're feeling that they're being treated unfairly where some are allowed to and some aren't. So I thank you, Mr. Dunsmore, for those.
You had two issues.
The second one is the Christmas party. I enjoyed being there at the Christmas party, I must say. But I'm wanting, no jokes, don't worry, I'm not going to sing either. Hey? But anyways, my issue is this. As a municipality, I can't see why we can't have a night and not call it a Christmas party, but call it a employee recognition night. And that we as the city foot the bill. I know some taxpayers aren't for it or in favor of it, but to me, I look at it as, you know, it's great to see employees gathering together for a festive season, you may see, but not all people celebrate the holiday season. Some don't recognize it like we do. We may have employees within this municipality that look at it that way, and they may not believe in that spirit, and they have other beliefs. And I believe that as a city, that during this year's budget deliberations, I will bring forward that we have a night of recognition. May it fall in December during the season, so be it. But to me personally, I think we should recognize our employees and that stuff, you know. I know for what the ticket was, $30 a meal. You know, if we got 100 employees, it's $3,000. And I think the employees shouldn't have to pay. And if they want to bring their spouses, sure, then pay. But I feel that it would be more of a night out for the employees and would show more camaraderie between employees. I think we would get more employees out, because I talk to employees, and when they say, why should I pay $30 to go to the city's Christmas party, even though I'm being paid for it, I realize that, but still, if I'm wanting to go to a party or spend $30, I could do it elsewhere. So I wanted to propose during the budget that we have a night of recognition. You know, at one time we used to do it, and the city used to give away a week's vacation at one time, and we came to a problem with that. And as a councillor, and you know, I can't see no problem. So maybe, you know, give me a raise. I've asked for one before, but you won't give it to me, and I'll put it towards the employee Christmas party, you know, type of deal. But I just wanted to bring that up, that I feel that as a municipality and that stuff, there's no reason why we can't recognize all the employees, the ones that were there, and all other employees, and give them an opportunity for that. It's a night that the city is going to have as an expenditure. So I'm going to be bringing that forward at this year's budget deliberations, because it was an enjoyable night, and I was saddened to see that not more employees from the city were in attendance.
Mr. Delwadia will respond to that.
Thank you, Councillor Henley. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly what we are seeking at this point, comments from various staff members who have attended the party, and also from anyone who has attended it, and want to make sure that how we can make it better moving forward. And certainly, you know, we are calling it as a holiday party, I guess, but certainly we can have it employee recognition, and that's certainly a good suggestion, and we can move forward with on that. Thank you.
you know, just the way, because the way society is going nowadays, it's the political way to be, like, not everybody recognizes, you know, you got to say happy holidays now and not Merry Christmas, and it's in the same aspect. So I'm great to see that the city's going to look into it and have a recommendation come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have 2 or 3 items, and usually Councillor Hanley brings up sidewalks, but tonight I'm going to bring up some sidewalks. The company that's going around putting in our sidewalks is doing a fairly good job as far as putting the actual sidewalk in, but what they're forgetting is to put in the sides of the sidewalk and put the dirt back in and re-put so that people don't fall off the sidewalk and hurt themselves and sue the city. There is one specific one that I just want to make sure is done over the next week, and that's at the corner of Claremont and Carlton, the southeast or southwest corner. I want to make sure that in front of their driveway and next to it that it is done over the next week because it is in real bad shape. But I went around after that and looked at all the rest of the sidewalks in that general area, and all of them have not been the dirt hasn't been put back in that. And I understand now it's late, and any sod that might have to be put down can't be done till the springtime, but it should have been done by now. It really should have been, and I think we're lax in not having that particular company do that and look after it. Maybe a comment from
Mr. Dunsmore, can you comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Neal 100%. We've been on our contractor. They've been, as you said, it was the end of the season. They've been pulled away a few times that we don't think is acceptable, and we're in the process of evaluating penalties associated with the work that they're doing at this point in time.
Thank you very much, and hopefully they'll get back to doing what they're supposed to be doing. Second item I have is just a comment on the downtown parking. Yesterday morning, a good friend of mine came down for coffee and he couldn't find a spot to park in any of our parking on Monday morning at about 8:45. Not a single parking spot was available yesterday morning. So I hope, and I've heard that by the end of the year, according to sources, that we are going to have it done, at least get it in the process of putting on our new system in place so that this doesn't happen in the future. Maybe a comment again from Mr. Dunsmore regarding that.
By all means.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as discussed previously in various reports and so forth, that we are moving forward, and the intent is to have it in before the end of the year. I was going to say before Christmas, but it's actually fallen just slightly after Christmas. And our intent is absolutely 100% to move forward with that process.
Thank you very much. I hope, because I've been going up and down Front Street with all the different retailers and businesses, and they're all, every single one of them, as Councillor Ugolini will attest to, that they're waiting patiently or impatiently.
Councillor, there's a report in general committee that's coming forward on that. So
yeah, I just want to make sure that there is a timeline and that they know that this is going to happen.
Mr. Delawadio will respond also to that.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add to it that certainly the process will begin and has already started. We have contacted the parking company for that. The part of the strategy, there will also be parking permits that would be issued. So there will be some timelines for it to be issued, and there is a grace period, and we will mention at that point in time that yes, nobody will be ticketed till the time. So, we have to give advance notice to public if we are changing the whole strategy, and we will make sure that it is properly advertised in the newspapers and on city's website so that everybody is aware of it. There will be a period there only the warnings will be issued, and subsequent to that, once we start implementing it, people who are in default of it will be ticketed.
Very good, excellent. Well, the last item I have, and it's probably just as much a regional item as I understand it, another municipality is asking for another regional councillor for their particular community. And if that is the case, then why are we not looking at it from a regional perspective of the 12 municipalities and changing the demographics, and whether we have another regional councillor more than the one that we have or whatever, but I think that we want to at least look at that particular process.
Well, you're going to get a look at it because for this to pass, it requires a triple majority. So you will have your say in that. And whatever this council votes on, I will take that vote, my one vote, and wherever this council goes, I will take that vote to the region.
Good, thank you.
So we're getting it on the 19th. Okay, I have Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple items. First of all, further to Councillor Neal's request about the sidewalks, can we fill up the ditch in the person's driveway at the corner of, I guess, Carlton and kitty corner of the Anglican Church?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the best way to get that done is to send it to us via email. We've got an ongoing list at this point in time, and we certainly are trying to get them to get out there and do as much as we possibly can.
That'd be great, because it's unbelievable that somebody left a ditch across their driveway like that. I'm surprised that they haven't wrecked their front end or back end of their car, so that'd be appreciated. Secondly, I'd like to ask for an agenda addition to our in-camera session for a staffing issue that I'd like some information on. If I can ask for another agenda issue when we go into in-camera tonight.
In camera?
Yes, please.
Can we do that?
So it's an in-camera item about identifiable individual?
That's correct.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, then we will go in camera for that.
When we go into camera, we can add to an agenda.
At the end of this meeting.
I believe there's
The item that was listed on the in-camera agenda, 14 St. David's West, has actually been deferred until December 19th.
Okay.
But we could still go in camera tonight because we have a series of minutes that we want to pass.
That'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. That's it. Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, two items. Number one, to the Director of Public Works and Community Services. If we can get a meeting with the arena manager, the manager of parks, arena, cemetery, and pools, yourself, and the TAA, it wants to put a representative. I don't mind sitting on it, but we got to get a plan to get the banners back in the arena. Every time I go in that rink, everybody's asking me, where's the banners? Well, we took all the banners down and we did the work. And because of the acoustic panels that we put up, we have to change how we put the banners back up. But we have teams that won Ontario championships, and then we have sweaters that have been retired and certain issues like that. We need to get back up, so if we can get a plan in place to move forward on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly will.
Thank you. And the other issue is today, representing the mayor and council, I was at the presentation. Dr. Paula Gardner, a professor from Brock University, led the presentation of the Through Your Eyes project that was put on. This was a joint venture between Niagara Regional Housing at 45 Ormond Street and Brock University Health and Sciences Department. And we're always here to deal with student issues and talk about problems with students. Well, today there's a good news story. I was there today. There was over 20 Brock students that worked in conjunction with seniors in that building and put together a presentation on working together, what issues they could work on in the city, what was good, what needs to be improved. And I've asked that that PowerPoint presentation that they made today come to our age-friendly committee, and they're going to make it in our age-friendly committee early in the new year, and then we'll bring forward some recommendations to council from that. But it's a good news story about what Brock's doing in the community that's outstanding, so I want to bring that up. Thank you.
Let's hope we get some media on that. Yeah. And by the way, that's, you said 45? 45. It's the small building. It's not the big one. 57, I believe, is the big one. Just to get that point across. Okay, that's other business. No, it doesn't. I have something, and I'm going to have the clerk pinch hit for me again, because...
So Mayor Luciani, can you please remove yourself from the chair? And Councillor Whalen, can you please take over?
So go ahead, Counselor.
This is from the mayor?
Yes, it is. I'm just his voice.
That's fine. Yeah, go ahead, the voice of Ted. Yeah.
So Mayor Luciani is putting a motion on the floor regarding whereas in accordance with City Thorold Policy Number 100-20, Councillor Wilson has taken an informal leave of absence from council since September the 5th, 2017. And whereas Section 259 of the Municipal Act 2001, C25 provides the office of a member of council becomes vacant if the member is absent from the meetings of council for 3 successive months without being authorized to do so by a resolution of council. And whereas City of Thorold Policy 100-20 provides a member of council may be granted a formal leave of absence by council for an additional period of 3 months, commencing on the expiration of the informal leave of absence period. And whereas the said policy further provides for any subsequent extensions to the formal leave of absence to be made prior to the expiration of the first formal leave of absence. And whereas according to the said policy, a member of council will not receive any remuneration from the city during a formal leave of absence. Now therefore be it resolved that a formal leave of absence for a period of 3 months be granted to Councillor Wilson, and that Thorold City Council waive Part 3, Section B of the policy in order that remuneration continue to be paid during this period. Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Hanley? Therefore, I don't think we need
Because
any...
I was supposed to be the speaker, I'm going to speak first.
That's fine.
Okay, I had a conversation with Councillor Wilson today. He's coming around. He's feeling better. It just happens that his treatments fall on Tuesdays all the time, and it knocks the heck out of him. He says, please bear with him. I want to come back. I'm going to come back. But so I'm asking that you support the resolution, and I thank you if you do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we need any other further discussion. We all wish him all the best, and if I'll put it to the vote.
Call the question.
All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you. Okay. And our clerk has something under other business also.
At our November 21st meeting, the General Committee received City Clerk's report to review council committees and boards and to establish a subcommittee of 3 councillors to work with myself to establish the committee to review all boards and committees. At the time, we only had 5 present, so we decided to defer this decision until this evening's meeting when we had more councillors present. So are there 3 that'd like to sit with me to review these?
Okay. Councillor Whalen? Or Councillor Hanley, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. No, I'll sit on the committee.
Okay, Councillor Longo will sit on the committee. Councillor Uglini will sit on the committee.
Great. Thank you. We'll be calling the first meeting just shortly after Christmas.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be absent, just to let you know, until January the 7th, so after January 7th. I'll be able to make day meetings too, until the spring. I'm on the road again.
Okay. Last thing under other business, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our new chief, Brian Dixon, to Thorold. You had an exciting first night here, as I seen.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for welcoming me to the city. I'm very excited to be a part of the city of Thorold and to be the fire chief. And yes, it's been a very interesting first night. Thank you.
It's not like that all the time, believe me. Okay, bylaws. Bylaw number 114-2017. Councillor Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Payon, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Bylaw number 114-2017, a bylaw to permit the registration of a hydro easement on Part 1 of Reference Plan 59R-15678, and to stop up and close part of Lot 226, part of a road allowance between lots 225 and 226, and the same now be read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Payon, that the bylaw just read a first time, be read a second and third, and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Notice of motions. Are there any? Seeing there is nobody with a notice of motion, I'll move towards to adjournment. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Longo. This meeting hereby adjourned at 8:05 p.m.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I call for a 5-minute break. Okay. I'd like to call this general committee meeting to order. Councilors, are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I'll proceed. We have one delegation, and that's Rachel Haynes, and she's a resident, and she wants to talk about the Director of Development and Engineering Services report, DES 2017-90.
Okay.
Welcome, Ms. Haynes. I have to remind you, council has received your written comments that you wish to address. And since you have previously spoke to this matter at the public meeting, please limit your comments to new information, only that pertaining directly to the subject matter.
Right.
So
just to clarify, can I summarize my letter that you have already received, or are you asking for new information in addition to today's letter?
I'll have our clerk answer that for you.
Sure.
You'd be providing new information only this evening. Councilors already have your written comments that you provided, and they've heard during the public meeting process.
Okay, well then I have no new information. I was just being proactive by providing you with that letter today.
Okay.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We're starting administration area, CAO 2017-07, proposal to establish a transit night route.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Belwadia, sorry.
The recommendation is that the proposed transit night route be approved as outlined in Appendix A of this report, and that is attached with the report. Thank you. That's the recommendation.
If I get a mover for the report, Councilor Ugolini. Speakers, Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the CAO, I just have a question on this. It says it was a previous route that was run, so it was run at the same hours before?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, and I had a look at the map, but it's a little hard to tell. The bus comes into Towpath and then exits to Albert Street and then Pine, or is it Queen Street?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, the route is from Towpath to Albert Street to Pine Street and then to St. David's Road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Neal.
That was going to be my question because they didn't have it on the map. They had it going down to Towpath, and then all of a sudden it's on St. David's Road. So
Okay. That clarifies that. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have nothing in the finance department, nothing in operations. We'll move right into development and engineering. DES 2017-89. Recommendation report regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for 2705 Highway 20. ZBA 01-2017. And Ms. Hannah?
The recommendations are that the Director of Development and Engineering Services report DES 2017-89 be approved as presented, and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw to rezone the subject land from the agricultural A zone to a site-specific agricultural A zone to permit a feed supply warehouse and miscellaneous farm-related retail operation to be presented at a future meeting. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. You're going to have to speak up a bit, and because it was hard for us to hear up here. I'm going to, in the budget proceedings, I'm going to ask for a new PA system. So when you whisper, it's like you're yelling. Okay. Okay, can I get a mover for the report? Councilor Neal.
So moved.
Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. DES 2017-90. Recommendation report regarding a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for DQ Terrace, 26 T-2017-01 and ZBA 05-2017. Again, that's Ms. Hannah?
Yes. The recommendation of the report are that the Director of Development and Engineering Services report, DES 2017-90, be approved as presented, that the plan of subdivision for draft Terrace be draft approved subject to the conditions in Appendix 6, that the mayor or designate be authorized to sign the draft plan as approved 20 days after notice of council's decision has been given as required by the Planning Act, provided no appeals of that decision have been lodged, that draft approval be given for 3 years, after which approval will lapse unless an extension is requested by the developer and granted by council, that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend the zoning from Development D to several site-specific residential first density R1CH with a holding provision zone, and to several site-specific residential third density R3H with a holding provision zones for those lands known as part township lots 34 and 52 and part of unopened road allowance that was closed by bylaw 865 geographic township of Thorold, and that council approved the zoning bylaw amendment as recommended by staff at a future council meeting. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Hanley.
So move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Speakers to the report. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the appropriate staff member, I read the report. It's very detailed, very good, but I do have a few concerns, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we could address these with the developer. And basically, my concerns have to do with the traffic study and parking. So I guess my first question is, I just want to confirm that parking will only be on one side of the streets in this new subdivision?
A draft plan condition relates to the parking on the one side, so there is a draft plan condition that requires it only be on one side.
Okay, perfect. Now, my other concern is, I see there's been a traffic study done, but my concern is that's probably based on theory more than observation because there's no roads there now. And I'm concerned that in time when this is built up, we will have traffic issues in there, and I'd like to know if we can implement somehow some traffic calming measures that staff could determine, maybe a three-way stop at streets A and B, because I can just see once this is developed that this will become a shortcut for people to leave Kiefer and get on the DQ or vice versa. So I'm wondering if there's something we can do there, work with the developer, so that this can be done in the early stages rather than the city have to fund the cost of it 2 or 3 years into the development.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, draft plan condition can be added to the draft plan conditions that appear before you tonight as Appendix 6. For example, the text could read that the developer agrees to install traffic calming measures on Street A and to install traffic calming signage on the intersection of streets A and B, and that would be to the satisfaction of the Director of Development and Engineering Services as well as the Director of Public Works. And those measures would be reflective in the engineering drawings and the draft plan condition itself, both of which would have to be satisfied before the subdivision could be finalized and receive final approval by council.
Okay, thank you. So that's something I'd like to see. So does the rest of council have to speak on it or vote on it, or how do we proceed from here to make sure that happens?
I think the planning department will, from this point, will take that into consideration and talk to the developer.
Great, but does the rest of council feel the same way? I don't want to impose something that I'm the only one that has that feeling.
Okay, I'll call that an amendment to the original motion, so I'll ask for speakers only to the amendment. Councillor Neal?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea, and I would definitely want some sort of calming measures put in for, as you just mentioned, that I could see that traffic is going to go through there, and just to make sure that it doesn't cause a problem.
Ms. Hannah?
If council is in agreeance, perhaps that we could amend the draft plan conditions that are before council tonight to add the draft plan condition, and I can read the text. And then planning staff would amend the draft plan conditions accordingly, but council will provide approval for all the draft plan conditions this evening.
You okay with that, Councillor Longo?
Okay,
Any other speakers to the amendment? And I'll call a question on the amendment only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, are there any other speakers? I had Councillor Neal, did you want to speak on it? Nobody else? Are there any other speakers? Seeing nothing, seeing there are no other speakers, I will call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. That passes. Okay. 91. Okay. Yep. DES 2017-91. Recommendation report regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for 6 Ann Street, ZBA 07-2017. And Mr. Darbyson?
The recommendations of the report are that the Director of Development and Engineering Services report, DES 2017-91, be approved as presented, and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw to rezone the subject land from residential 3rd density R3 zone to a site-specific residential 4th density R4A zone to be presented at a future meeting for approval. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Darbyson. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Payon.
So moved.
Speakers to the report. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the appropriate staff member. My concern here has to do with parking. We just had 2 public meetings, and parking seems to be an issue with a lot of developments that are coming forward. This one here goes against our current zoning bylaw, and I understand that staff is bringing forward a new comprehensive zoning bylaw that we've asked for. So we're going to bring a new bylaw in place with new rules, yet we don't follow the rules we have now. And right now, this development is required to have 1.5 parking spaces per unit, but is proposed at 1.25. And I would just like to know why we're doing that, and if there's a way to change this.
Mr. Darbyson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. The zoning bylaw requires a 1.5 space per dwelling unit. The site plan actually has 10, so there's actually a deficiency of 2 spaces. I had discussions with staff about this matter, and there is on-street parking on Ann Street on one side. Typically what an apartment is, how it's looked at is that you provide 1 space per unit with additional visitor parking. So in an 8-unit building, you would require 8 spaces plus the additional visitor. And because there's on-street parking on Ann Street, we felt that the site plan would accommodate 2 additional visitor parking spaces, bringing the total count to 10, and any additional visitor parking would be accommodated on Ann Street. The location's also proximate to our downtown Pine Plaza, so on and so forth, so the ability to walk is also was considered as well.
So I'll refer to the report. In the report somewhere, it talks about the limited parking on Ann Street at this point now. So to try to put a few more cars out there may not be a great idea. Again, I go back to a few years ago when developments like this come up and there's just not enough parking and we just seem to let it go by. I'm just not happy with it. I wish staff could go back and speak to the developer and find out a way to make the parking work, because we have to be fair across the board here. And I'm not going to support this at this time. I'd like to see staff work with the developer.
Councillor Payon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a similar concern. I mean, parking is the main issue, but more generally, maybe it's just a coincidence, but there seems to be a lot of apartment buildings coming in residential areas and a rezoning to progressively higher densities. I understand that the provincial directive is to try and increase density as opposed to use new land. I understand that and I support that to some extent, but I'm wondering if we've given enough consideration to putting too many buildings into residential areas. In other words, we saw it tonight at the public meeting, a 4-story building going into what are home, residential area with homes. And there was a 3-story building before that. That was in a more appropriate location, in my opinion. This is also a building going into a residential area, which is mostly homes. You know, once you start putting enough of these, it's always said that the new building keeps the character of the community, although there's some question as to that in some cases. If you put enough of these buildings in, then that becomes the new character. And so there seems to be almost a push to intensify to the point where homes are not the main thing going into certain areas anymore, but you got buildings going in. And I'd hate to see some of these neighborhoods become places where you have 3- and 4-story buildings popping up. I realize it's not specific to this, but I have some concerns, and maybe we need to discuss this at a greater level. But if we're going to zone an area R3, to then, I mean, at the time, there would seem to be, I would hope, some thought into thinking why this area should be R3. And now we just say it's going to be R4 to increase the intensity. I think we need to have a more serious discussion about that in general across the world. And for this one specific, I have the parking concerns as well, so I don't think I can support it at the moment either.
Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have the same concerns as both my fellow councillors that spoke just a minute ago, especially again, like we've got the same problem that we had with the other public meeting earlier today. What's going to happen to the property on either side? They won't see sun. You got this huge building going up to a small residential house. Where does it stand? I feel the same way. We got to go back and give some more thought to this project and see where it stands, see if we can make it adaptable and more pleasing to everybody. Especially on Ann Street, that's a small street too. Again, to push the parking out of the parking lot onto Ann Street, that's a big concern. And then like I say devaluation of the properties on either side, that's going to happen. So,
I'll comment to that. It does fall in line with the Ontario Smart Growth Policy to intensify inside the urban boundary. Mr. Delwadia.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and understanding the concerns that has been raised by Councillor Longo and others, I think if we can, you can defer it. We'll go back to the drawing board. I'll ask staff to have a look at it again and see whether reducing it from 1.5 to 1.25 in this particular case is justified. We certainly can go back and reassess the situation and then bring the back again report on the December 19th.
I need a speaker who hasn't spoken to defer this, if that's what, Councillor Ugolini, you defer it? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It'll go back to the developer to see if we can get more parking in the development. Okay. What was that? We're into the clerk's section. CC 2017-60, Municipal Election Recount Policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's being recommended that Thorold City Council adopt a municipal election recount policy as outlined in City Clerk's report 2017-60. That concludes the report.
Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Neal.
So moved.
Speakers to the report? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 2017-61, use of corporate resources for election purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation that Appendix A to City Clerk's Report 2017-61, being a policy regarding use of corporate resources for election purposes, be approved. That concludes the report.
Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Sharon.
Move the report.
Speakers to the report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 2017-62, procedure bylaw update, and Ms. Del Vecchio is going to provide us with a presentation.
The recommendations of the report is that City Clerk's Report 2017-62 and the supporting presentation be received for information purposes, that the draft procedure bylaw be posted on the city's website on December 6th to adhere to our public notice policy, that comments from council on this proposed bylaw be permitted until December the 12th, 2017, and that the procedure bylaw be presented to council approval on December 19th with an effective date of January 1st. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation of more of the bigger changes to the bylaw that I'll run through. Everyone has a copy on their desks, as well as a copy of the full bylaw. So this document is being reviewed at this time as our current procedure bylaw was adopted in September 1995. And since then, many changes have occurred to the Municipal Act. There was the introduction of closed meeting procedures, and those two matters are not addressed in the current bylaw. Updating this bylaw involved a lot of research from other municipalities, looking at best practices, analyzing our current meeting practices, while keeping in mind that all legislative requirements must be complied with. The intent is to bring the bylaw forward on December 19th for implementation in 2018. Our eScribe system can currently support the changes, and they are being updated to reflect. The plan going forward is to do a governance review every 2 years, review the procedure bylaw to ensure that we're always compliant with new legislation. I know on the screen it looks small what our new council agenda will look like, but there is a slide, and it's also attached to your bylaw. So essentially, the council agenda will be one agenda with a resolve into general committee to deal with reports, then back into council and for adoption. We'll be eliminating the need to go into special council. So an overview of some of the bigger changes. A definition section has been added at the beginning of the document. So civic recognition is where individuals will be before council to accept an award or a recognition, or for members of the community to present council with an award, or councillors at that time can recognize any type of community event that they like. So oftentimes under other business, we make announcements. They'll all go under civic recognition. We'll be implementing a consent agenda, which is a listing of reports that include but are not limited to those with no delegations, where no discussion is anticipated, informational items, and routine matters. As always, a 2/3 vote of council can still temporarily suspend rules contained within the bylaw, but keeping in mind it should be restricted to matters of urgency. All local boards under the Municipal Act and committees of council will use the rules of order and debate and relevant provisions of this bylaw to govern the calling of their meetings. A training session with all local boards and committees is scheduled for mid-January. All groups and agencies and firms that receive funding from council will adopt provisions related to access to public meetings similar to this bylaw. And the roles and duties of the mayor, the deputy mayor, council and clerk have also been embedded in the document. Meetings. Members are to advise the clerk if they're unable to attend a regular or special meeting. And if a quorum is in question, the meeting will be rescheduled. Quorum must be present within 15 minutes at the commencement of the meeting. Notice of all meetings, agendas, cancellation will only be posted on our annual meeting schedule on the website. The agenda for special meetings will be posted 12 hours, no less than 12 hours before the start of the meeting. And should it appear that a storm or like occurrence will prevent members from attending, the mayor has the opportunity to postpone the meeting, and we'll put those matters in at the next regular meeting. The mayor may at any time call a special meeting of council upon receipt of a petition of the majority of members of council authorizing a special council meeting, and clerk staff will reach out to all members to deliver prompt notification of such. We have our standard reasons to go into closed sessions. This slide has not changed, but the following slide with Bill 148, we have 4 new avenues that we can go into in camera. That starts on January 1st. There are reasons for information supplied in confidence by the federal government, provincial government, or Crown agency. So quite often if we receive grant funding, we cannot share that information open session. We now have the opportunity to go in closed. If they're sharing a trade secret or scientific or commercial that's supplied in confidence to the municipality, we can go in camera for that. And if there's a position or a plan or procedure applied to any negotiations, we can also go in camera. The city clerk will begin recording audio proceedings of closed session meetings for record purposes, and these will be retained in accordance with our retention bylaw. This is a recommendation by the Ontario Ombudsman to all municipalities. And a closed meeting protocol has been developed in conjunction with our procedure bylaw that I'll be bringing forward on December 19th. And the document serves as a guide on how to conduct business while council is meeting in a closed session. Bill 68 has amended the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act by adding that a meeting at which a member discloses an interest, they do have to file a written statement of interest in its general nature with the clerk. These statements will form part of a registry that'll be available for public inspection. This will be what the form looks like, and it'll be placed on each councillor's desk when they come into a notice of motion. Notice of motion must be made verbally at the meeting and provided to the clerk in writing 1 week in advance of the scheduled meeting. Failing to do so could result in the delay to the next meeting, and if by the 3rd meeting a notice of motion is not preceded, it shall be deemed to have been withdrawn. Typically, motions that are dealt with other business in our current bylaw will now be made by this notice of motion. This improves accountability and transparency, as the public should have a right to know what motions are being presented prior to its adoption. Reconsideration, so any proposal to reconsider, amend, or rescind a previous decision of council can still be done. The motion to reconsider may only be introduced by a member who was present at the meeting and voted in the majority when the decision was made, or the member was absent. It will be introduced as a notice of motion, and it requires an affirmative vote of 2/3 vote of members present. Bylaws will now be put together in one single package. Instead of breaking them apart in twos, there'll be one package. We'll pass it by one motion. Other business. We'll be implementing a statement. We'll be renaming other business to statement by councillors, and each member will have a limit of 3 minutes to speak during the statement of councillor section. During this time, the member will limit their comments to 3 items and provide notification to the city clerk of their intention to speak to the item the day prior to the meeting by 12 noon. Speaking items or time may also be extended by a majority of voted members present. This will help staff prepare accordingly for questions that may arise during a meeting, so we can provide you current or up-to-date answers, or it will also eliminate the need to ask for a report, which further delays answers coming forward. Staff direction shall be through a resolution of council or by a direction of general committee in writing, and the resolution should be specific and state a date of receipt or report by council. Presentations. So anyone who wants to present to council, we currently call them delegations. We're now going to call them presentations. They need to pertain to a matter which is within council's statutory jurisdiction. They'll be heard during regular council. They must make their requests 1 week in advance of the meeting by 4:30. We have created an online form, and we're asking all delegates to use this form to register, and they can include their attachments as well. Presentations will be limited to 10 minutes max. Right now it's 15, and a maximum of 3 presentations will be permitted per meeting. Where there's a public meeting, the number of presentations may be decreased or eliminated until the next meeting. Councillors will be permitted to ask the presenter questions directly related to the matter under consideration, and the question must only be for the purpose of obtaining facts for clear understanding. This is what the general committee agenda will look like. And again, like I said, we're going to a consent agenda. So we'll resolve from regular council, go into general committee, deal with our reports, and then resolve back into regular council. So changes made to the general committee agenda. Items will be placed on a consent agenda for those that require no delegations, no discussions anticipated, information items, and routine matters, and approval of projects that receive funding during annual budget deliberations. Any item placed on a consent agenda may be moved to the discussion agenda by the request of an individual councillor for the purpose of amending the staff recommendation only. Items will be placed on a discussion agenda for those that have delegations, council has requested a report, purchases that were not budgeted, or any type of annual budgets. All items on the consent agenda will be moved by a single motion that is not debatable or amendable, and a member may make a brief comment regarding the consent item prior to the consideration of the motion. Delegations in general committee, they will have until 4:30 p.m. the day before the meeting to register using the online form. They'll be limited to 10 minutes maximum. Councillors can again ask delegates questions related to the matter under consideration. And councillors are encouraged to provide questions to staff prior to the meeting so they can address any answers received during the comment portion of the discussion. Public meeting delegations. So maximum time for all individuals to speak during a public meeting will be limited to 5 minutes, and you can only speak once. If written comments are submitted, the oral presentation cannot address the same comments, and a delegation will not be permitted on any matter that is the subject of a future statutory public meeting or of a statutory public meeting which has been closed. Adjournment. So all meetings will adjourn when all business on the agenda is complete, or at 10 p.m., whichever is earlier. When business has not been completed by 10, a 2/3 majority of vote can extend it until 10:30. But no meeting will proceed beyond 10:30, and unless decided otherwise prior to the adjournment of the meeting, unfinished business will be discussed at the next scheduled meeting. And that's the end. And I know it seems like there's a lot of changes, but it's more just of a reordering. It's bringing accountability and transparency to our council chambers.
Are there any questions for our clerk? Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We should compliment our clerk for doing a great job of streamlining things. Just sure would have come in handy a couple of years ago when we had the 1 or 2 a.m. meetings. So,
Yeah, those days are over.
thank God. So, great work, Donna. So,
Okay, this has been presented for information purposes. Basically, what we're saying here is to take it home. You've got 2 weeks to read it over and come back, and we'll make a decision on it in 2 weeks' time. But if you have any comments now, right now is your opportunity to present questions to Ms. Del Vecchio. Are there any questions? Councillor Pillon?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the delegation part, or what you're calling What are you calling it now? Not delegation?
If you're in council, it's a presentation.
Presentation. The in-council presentations were limited to 10 minutes and only 3 presentations. I didn't notice a limit on the number of presentations in the general committee.
We cannot limit the number
Okay.
because they'll be dealing with specific report.
So
that's their only opportunity
that'll
to
still be
speak.
the same as now,
Yes.
just reduced from 15 minutes to 10?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm sure you'll have quite a few in 2 weeks' time. So mark it up. Mark up your like Councillor Sharon would say. Mark it up.
I want to thank.
Mark it up in red pencil, right?
Okay, mark it up in red pencil. It's really interesting that after I decide not to run again, you cut the meetings down to 10:30. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, but I want to commend you for the effort you put into this. This is really a dramatic change in way meetings are going to be run. I'm sure it took a lot of work to make it so it's going to work properly and make it a better system, and a thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Therefore, this is for information purpose, so I'll call a question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, all this paper over. CC 2017-63, request to apply for roads assessment funding from Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And is that Ms. Goulet?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of the report are that staff be authorized to apply for funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, to help cover up to 80% of the costs for the purchase of a street scan program, and that $10,000 from the Capital Asset Transportation Reserve be earmarked for this project. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Ugolini. Nobody puts their hand up. This side, nobody puts their hands up.
I will.
I'll call the question.
Oh, not that way.
I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CC 2017-64, volunteer appointment to Darlene Ryan, Port Robinson Community Center Board of Management. Ms. Goulet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of the report is that Allison Meisner be appointed to the Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center Board of Management. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Hanley.
So move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Speakers to the report. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move into the Fire and Emergency Services section. FES 2017-14, bunker gear immersion suit air dryer. What is that?
It's a mouthful.
It's powerful, yeah.
Get rid of the stink.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
the recommendation is council approve a general budget overrun of $8,450 plus HST for the purchase of a bunker gear immersion suit air dryer from Sparkle Solutions. So concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Dixon. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Longo.
So move the report.
Speakers to the report. Councillor Longo, since he moved it first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to
Councillor
introduce
Whalen.
myself to the new fire chief.
Pleasure.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you. Thank you.
Thanks for the report, but I'm sure the rest of council do not want to see a budget overrun every meeting you come to.
I'll try my best. How's that?
Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of ditto. It's just that we're 3 weeks before the end of the year. We've had tons of overruns this year. To have another one, it's a little upsetting that, like, I know the chief isn't involved with this, but it's kind of hard to fathom the fact it's coming through again, another overrun. So hopefully the chief can think of that when he's going forward for next year and stay within budget as much again. I know he's got an accounting background, so Maria will be happy with that and get things in line for next year. Thank you.
Can anybody answer any of that? Maybe Mr. Dixon? Chief Dixon, you have a...
I'll be happy to take the advice and see that there's a past history of it and try to correct that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, can I get a move? We move the report. Speakers to the report. Any more speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're going in camera for... That's not happening. He's not happening. For minutes of in-camera general committee meeting held on May 2nd, minutes of in-camera meeting held on May 16th, minutes of in-camera committee meeting held on on July 4th. That should take 30 seconds. And the camera's still on and everything's on. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Councillor Hanley? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I survived.
You survived. Next week. Next week. Yes. All the